Welcome to Product Momentum, a community of thought leaders and learners coming together to celebrate the product people who are shaping our way ahead. Inspired by our most pressing questions and insightful guests, we'll explore the challenges you face and offer practical, hands-on guidance your team can implement today. This is Product Momentum. Here are your hosts, Sean Flaherty and Paul Gable.
Hey, everybody. I'm really excited to share the conversation we just had with Itamar Gilad. He is a really insightful product manager, coach, and career leader. I think he's got a lot of stories to tell. And one of the most compelling parts of the conversation that I hope jumps out to you is just trying to figure out what kind of culture you're operating within. And you might get an answer one way where you run an experiment and you discover some ideas or ways to implement a solution that tells you, I'm in a place where openness and transparency and hypothesis evidence guided product management can thrive. Or you might get some feedback that it might be time to brush up your resume and look for a place somewhere else. But either way, I think these models are going to be helpful for deciding between two good options or looking for evidence to shape a roadmap and build something really powerful. But either way, I think you're going to find some real value in the models that Itamar has put together. And I think this is going to be a conversation worth listening to. Let's get after it. Well, hey, everyone, and welcome to the show. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Itamar Gilad. Itamar is a coach, author, speaker. He specializes in evidence-guided product management and product strategy. For over 2 decades now, he's held senior product management and engineering roles at Google, Microsoft, and a number of startups. And at Google, Itamar worked at YouTube and led parts of Gmail. The work that he's done in writing, evidence-guided, creating high-impact products in the face of uncertainty has really started to inform a new conversation about talking about product management and creating a number of product management methodologies, including GIST and the confidence meter. Itamar, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. I'm really excited to have you on the show.
Thank you guys for inviting me and for this very generous introduction.
Absolutely. You know, someone who's been through the trials and career and journey that you've had from Google Plus to the tabs that we all now understand is just kind of using the Gmail experience, the promotions and social tab that you've been a part of. You know, so much of your work is in these really high visibility experimentation, product laboratories of experience and research and evidence. And that's a lot of the themes that you bring to all of the books that you've written, and especially in evidence guided. Just to get us started, can you talk about your background in a more technical domain and transition to product management and eventually coaching? How has this technical background informed your advocacy for this evidence-based approach from an engineering to a product manager to a coach? What does it mean to you to be evidence-guided in product work?
Spending a career of 20 years actually doing operative stuff, not just coaching or consulting or training. I started out the first 5 years, I was an engineer, software engineer, and I kind of bounced out between kernel level stuff and today we would call it a full stack engineer. I tried many different things. And then I found that I'm attracted to the product management side of things. So I switched roles and I became a product manager for the next 15 years. And I really enjoyed it. And then I switched to the dark side and became this coach thing. So I would say you can't really stop being an engineer. It's like the ingrained objection to BS, I think, is the key attribute of us engineers. And I found that there's a fair amount of, I wouldn't call it BS. It's a real intentional, honest attempt to build the right product, but using opinions, using consensus, using sparse data. And that part throughout my career as a product manager, I used, but I felt a bit apprehensive about. I felt that like I'm projecting this false confidence that my ideas are the best. But the engineer in me kept whispering it like, you don't really know. You're just faking it. And I think the results spoke for themselves. Like throughout this career, I didn't have that many big wins. I had a couple, but most of what I launched was kind of mundane. And I asked this question to a lot of engineers out there, PMs and engineers out there. what percentage of your launches actually created impact? And we'll talk about what impact means. And people rarely say more than 50%. So
Yeah.
everyone actually knows that the bulk of what they're doing is not so good. So that really bothered me. And as I described in the book, it's at Google that I kind of discovered product discovery, research, user research, exploratory research, all these good things that we now take for granted.
Yeah.
And I started using them. And that really changed my perspective. And that was the thing I wanted to teach.
Yeah. Right up front, I have to make sure it's clear. In no way is your anti-BS engineering approach meant to take pot shots or criticize. You're very clear that even though you've been a part of some projects that are mundane or maybe even a failure or two along the way, that you're not throwing stones at decisions that have been made. You've learned a lot through just taking Google Plus as the most obvious example. A lot of time, thousands, maybe millions of hours spent over the years, and a lot of people spent time on that. And you talk a lot about the plan and execute mindset versus the sort of outcome and evidence based intuitive approach, where we're balancing this, looking for the data points, talking to people, and maybe even committing to an idea that we don't fully agree with or understand. The tabs in Gmail, the promotion tab and social tab in Gmail, as sort of this hypothesis, and that humility is really clear throughout your writing. That you're not sort of being a skeptic just to poke holes in people's decisions or claim to be smarter. It's just trying to infuse a more open, transparent version of leadership at the product level. Is there anything that you'd like to add to that kind of mindset or approach to your writing and the things that you thought and wrote about?
No, I think that's bang on. That's exactly right. I mean, it's easy to assume that, senior leadership, stakeholders, they're mean people. They're trying to control us. They're not empowering us, but they're actually trying their best. They're really,
Yeah.
honestly, for the bulk part of my career, I never saw anyone really trying to sabotage the product or control product people just for the sake of the fun of it. They're just using a playbook. It may have worked, I don't know, mid 20th century. But with the levels of uncertainty and all the moving parts we have outside our company and inside our company, in our technology, in our product, it's really impossible to use this playbook successfully today. And that's the plan and execute model, where we believe that if we just spend enough time creating the perfect top level plan and then create a set of cascading plans and then execute very well on these plans, we will achieve greatness. And it simply doesn't work.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of anecdotal, sort of almost apocryphal stories of the visionary founder that has the perfect idea, and it's very compelling. We all want to be that founder. We all want to have that killer app idea. We all want to be the product manager that leads the silver bullet that solves all the problems, cures all the diseases. And I think that that aspect of the visionary founder is a little bit misguided, if I could say so. I think even the most visionary, taking Steve Jobs as sort of the name that often comes up, as sort of these ideas kind of descend from on high, and it just manifests fully formed and gets expressed. But even those founders that have those ideas, as important as they are, they have to be informed by evidence and research and hypothesis and testing. No idea pops into a product manager's head sort of fully envisioned and just ready to hand to a team to go execute. Is that part of what this means to incorporate these evidence-based models into our decision making?
Absolutely. And I think the word leadership is very important here. You mentioned this earlier. We need to change the way we lead ourselves. And that's at every level, because even team leads are leads. They are leading a team.
Yep.
Even individual contributors are leading an area. And the way we used to lead ourselves, which was basically, at my level, I'm going to create this plan. I'm going to tell you guys what you need to do. I may spell out to you in detail what's the result I expect. You go and figure out the details. Sometimes it works, but you're actually playing against the odds, because we now know from research that most ideas are simply not very good. and that includes the ideas that came from Steve Jobs and from Mark Zuckerberg and from all these brilliant visionary people. They can and will tell people, I want you to build this. I think this is the most important thing. But what we don't know, and this is the story that's usually hidden, is that they build around them a system of feedback and a system that is very evidence guided to kind of inform them whether or not they're on the right track. And as Steve Jobs has said, he admitted he's wrong often, but he doesn't care as long as they do the right thing. And I think if you ask Zuckerberg, he said a similar thing. He said, people think that innovation is just coming up with a good idea and doing it, but actually it's trying out stuff. So they really want to be informed. They really want to be told, we tested your idea and it didn't turn out as well. What do you think? And that's exactly what I'm trying to teach, this model of leadership. And the results, once you implement this, are incredible. And it can work in practically every organization. It is a culture change, absolutely. It's not an easy transition. A lot of organizations fail through it. But if you are able to do it, it's a completely different ballgame.
Yeah, I think I want to jump into some of the models in just a minute, but just I think one asterisk that you'd agree with is no process can be copy pasted from one organization into another without adaptation. Every organization has their own product flow, feedback loops, decision-making paradigms. And while you do offer a process in the book, and I think it's fairly global in its approach where you could implement the pieces, it's going to have to be adapted to your organization. So even in the process itself, there is no silver bullet. You have to test and tweak and kind of hem the ends a little bit to make sure that it fits your organizational style. So that being said, you offer a few kind of nested models: the GIST model, the ICE model, the confidence meter. And I would love to maybe not dive deeply into how to use each, but as a system, can you introduce some folks who maybe haven't been exposed to your work before or the models before, how these measurements can fit together into a hypothesis-driven, evidence-guided approach to product management?
Right. So when I left Google, I felt I had a message that was unique, like let's do product discovery. But of course, Kagan and Eric Ries and the people of design thinking and many others already communicated this message, and most people actually knew about it. What I found is that implementation always fails, or almost always fails. It's really hard. It's going against the grain of a lot of things that we're used to do. So I started thinking as a product manager, so to speak, what kind of tool can I give my own clients so they can implement successfully? And I realized that what Google did successfully, and not everything is perfect in Google, no company is perfect, is A, set goals very well, measurable goals that are about outcomes. B, we were able, and again, this is in pockets inside Google. I cannot generalize it across the entire company. B, we were able to prioritize. We were able to pick the right ideas, but picking an idea didn't mean that we're going to build it in full. It meant these are the ideas we'll test first. And that's where the next layer of the GIST model, goals, ideas, steps, is about finding quick and easy ways to validate the key assumptions. And then once these assumptions are validated, go further and validating with more expensive ways up to a point where you feel the idea is validated and you switch to delivery. So discovery and delivery is implemented at this level. And then the task layer is how to bring this into the reality of your team. Your team is using Agile probably, and there's a likelihood that somewhere along the way, someone gave them the message that their job is delivery, and they need to burn through their story points, and discovery is not in the picture at all, and how to change this reality. So this is the GIST model: goals, ideas, steps, and tasks. And I try to create tools or offer off-the-shelf tools for each one of those. And those are 4 areas of change that every organization, I think, needs to tackle. Beyond that, there's strategy, there's exploratory research. Those are also very important things. Culture, that's not what GIST is about. GIST is just like concretely how to change these 4 things. And it's a leadership change, it's a development change, it's a lot of fine details. Within this, a key part within the evaluation and validation techniques that I described, that are the two parts of discovery. Evaluation, I find that ICE is very useful. ICE is impact, confidence, and ease. It's if you're not familiar with it, for each idea, you're supposed to guesstimate what's the impact, and impact is how likely is this idea to affect or to create a major impact on a target metric or a goal. 10 out of 10 is like the most impactful idea you can imagine. 0 is no impact whatsoever. Ease is like the opposite of effort. How easy or hard it is going to be. If it's just 2 weeks to launch, super easy, I'll give it a 10. If it's really expensive, I'll give it a 2. And so on. And for a lot of my career, those were the 2 parameters. Let's pick the high impact, relatively cheap ideas. Let's find a balance between these 2. But it turns out, and psychologists have proven this, that we're very bad at guesstimating these things. Especially when we like an idea, we tend to overestimate the impact and underestimate the ease. That's called the planning fallacy. We all fell for this. And the brilliant part of ICE, introduced by Sean Ellis, by the way, the growth hacking guru, is the confidence. Confidence is another 0 to 10 number that says, how sure are we about the impact on these? That's all it says. And by forcing people to ask this question, you're introducing this element of risk. Can something actually fall? What are the assumptions, etc.? But I found that people are very generous with their confidence levels. They're giving themselves 7s and 8s, while it's actually not the case. They're using very low levels of evidence. So I created a tool called the confidence meter, which works a little bit like a thermometer. It goes from very low confidence, which is around 0, and that's the area of opinions. Your own self-opinion, even if you're the smartest person in the industry, the opinion of the industry. If your idea is about generative machine learning, does it mean that it's a good idea? No, that's thematic support. Then you can do reviews with your colleagues. That gives you a little bit more confidence, but your colleagues are rarely the target audience. You can do back of the envelope calculations or business model, and that sometimes shows you that the idea is not worth doing. So that's a slightly harder test. But up to this point, you're maybe 0.5 confidence out of 10. Move further, you need to start collecting data. So data analysis, customer interviews, surveys, etc. This data might manifest as anecdotal. So just a couple of customers told you that this is a good idea. Anecdotal evidence can easily distract us. I've seen so many companies that like an idea and the leading competitors have this idea. This is another form of anecdotal. Let's build it. The idea is validated. Absolutely not. You should test it further. It could be what I call market data that comes in larger data sets. But that in itself, again, brings you maximum to 2 or 3 out of 10. To go higher, to medium and high confidence, you need to test the idea. You need to validate it. And we have many, many forms of tests, by the way. Not all of them are expensive or difficult. Many are just faking the idea. And I would say that the biggest problem I see in adoption is that companies don't embrace that part. They try to choose ideas based on the data they have and the few customer interactions they had. They don't want to test it. But that's really what gives you the high confidence. So this is the nested set of models, GIST, leading to ICE, leading to the confidence meter.
Yeah, I'm glad you unpacked the confidence meter because I wanted to spend a minute on that. And just to tease it out a little bit more, I really like the way that you describe it as sort of turning it into a math problem. And I think a lot of that anecdotal evidence that starts to build up, the stories that we tell each other and the planning fallacies that you mentioned earlier, I think all go to, that bigger picture story of what you mentioned at the beginning of why so many of the products that we embark on building fail. And I think a lot of it comes down to if we had stopped and just taken a day or a half a day or just an hour to ask how confident are we, and not just how confident do we feel, but have we tested it? Do we have data to back it up? And ascribing some kind of measurable number that we can plug into a formula to understand, okay, we feel confident, but do we know that we're confident? And that distinction, I think, is a really helpful model for product managers to understand, because so many times we're taking we take a list of features, we build out requirements, and we just get to work without really asking the question, why are we doing what we're doing? So I really appreciate that calibration aspect that you bring to it. Changing gears just slightly, I want to talk about how to implement these models, because all of these ideas are great. I highly recommend the book for anyone who hasn't read it yet, but all of this change can be really scary. If we bring this to an organization for the first time, inertia is a thing, and it is very hard to overcome once an organization becomes set in its ways. How can we start to bring these ideas to our teams, especially if we're an agile team, product owner, individual contributor, not necessarily a decision maker for the overall processes of an organization? How can somebody in that role bring pieces and ideas of this back to their teams and use today, having heard some of this, even if they're just trying to influence without the authority to make a policy decision in their org?
Yeah, that's the $1 billion question, honestly. The transformation, if you like. We need to understand that it's a multitude of changes. It's not just one. It's
Right.
not just one process that you implement, and within a couple of quarters, there you are. You're in this modern product development mindset. It is a gradual transition. And I think you need to really pick your battles and decide where to start. So in the GIST model, I explained there are 4 areas: setting goals, choosing ideas, testing these ideas. And by the way, for me, you need to reevaluate the ideas every time you test them. So it's not a one-time process, it's an ongoing process. A lot of people, by the way, are apprehensive about putting numbers on ideas. It feels a little bit made up. And true, you cannot really put numbers on these things, but it's just a forcing function. It forces people to reckon, ask the question, what is the impact? Given the evidence, do we still think it's a 7? Maybe it's a 4. So that's the beauty of it. So evaluating ideas and validating them, and then changing the way the team works. And in every organization, they do a little bit of each, but some area is the most painful right now.
Right.
Maybe you set way too many goals, and the goals are all about output, or the goals are very misaligned. They're sending the sales team in one direction, the product org in another, the marketing yet another vector. So start there. And in the book, I give techniques how to create much better goals based on models. I suggest picking 2 top-level metrics, creating metrics hierarchies below them, and then kind of identifying what are the key metrics that we really need to improve. And again, it goes back to leadership, how to reduce the number of objectives and key results to the bare minimum at every level. On team level, I think you shouldn't have more than 4 key results, period. And even that is hard for most teams. How to continuously evaluate your OKRs and adjust towards achieving them. So that will be a good start if you feel that that's the key pain point for the organization. If you're spending way too much time in debate, or a lot of ideas are just taken by hippo, try to introduce ice and evidence. And for all of those, by the way, I suggest techniques, how to not confront the wave, how not to kind of go against the establishment, but how to actually show that you are helping, offering helpful tips, and gradually showing them that there's an alternative. So I'm happy to share 1 or 2 of those if you like. If you're not testing at all, or you're testing very slowly, start at the steps layer. And that means starting to map out assumptions and picking cheap ways to validate these assumptions and letting more ideas into the funnel instead of the 3 ideas that you must launch now. Pick 15 and validate many of them very, very quickly, and then you're left with 5, and then you go into the next funnel, etc. And if your team is very disengaged, I offer yet another tool called the GIST board, which is a way to get the team to coalesce around the goals, which are customer goals and business goals, around the ideas and around the steps, rather than just around the agile rituals. You mentioned product owner, and we all know how many rituals there are, but inadvertently, it distracts the team from actually working towards achieving the business goals. They're working towards burning story points or delivering small increments of code, which is not really in the spirit of agile whatsoever. So how do you change this mindset? How do you make them discoverers as well as the delivery teams? So pick your battles if you find resistance in the book, I offer a lot of kind of types of resistance you might find, and I try to give you some ammunition. But one of the most common ones is that people will tell you this is slow, or this is going to make us lose business. We cannot afford this. We just need to run as fast as possible. So one exercise you can do is go back to last year's roadmap where you ran like hell and show them how much of this roadmap actually impacted the business or the customer experience. How many of these ideas were actually good? Most companies don't even ask this question. They're just happy to have launched this obviously good idea and they move on. Most of these ideas takes much longer to launch than we expect. Sometimes there's surprises and we have to unlaunch stuff. So how good is the roadmap planning model right now in your organization? So that's one way to shine a light on the problem if the organization is not yet aware of it. And the conclusion is usually at least 50% of our engineering resources are wasted. We're just building the wrong things and we're confusing our customers and we're bloating our products and we have to carry this luggage forever. So this is a very strong message that I think every leadership team should understand.
Yeah. I want to stay on the topic of leadership for just a few more minutes. I think, having only a few minutes left, I want to make sure that the message that you just shared is really clear, that the idea of a product owner, a product manager, team level, delivery team level influence can be meaningful, even though it's slow, even though it might be small and incremental. Creating that culture of transparency and building trust through these models, I think, is much more powerful than meets the eye. It might look like just a dashboard or just a canvas, just a business model. But I think when you have these conversations, that's where the real power is. I think having that ability to treat a delivery team like a discovery team, oftentimes that's relegated to that's UX research as its domain. We're just here to build features and ship code. And I think that your idea of bringing the leadership of a product to solve a human problem is a very influential, though understated, role that a product manager can play in a team. So just staying on this idea of leadership, I know that the models are very accessible. You can download them all for free from your website. The book goes into a lot of detail to unpack and apply them all. But leadership as a mindset, I think, is really what is the catalyst behind all of this. None of this is valuable to anybody unless someone has the courage to speak up and say there is a better way, or there is a different way to think about this, or hey, maybe we can approach this from a slightly different angle since the last one didn't work out so well. It might be worth a shot. How can we start to develop some of this courage in product management communities of practice where people have the tools in their toolbox to feel like they are influential despite the title they hold? What comes to mind when you think of that ammunition that you referred to for ways to address resistance or just overcoming that inertia within our teams? What have you seen as a success story that you can point to for someone in that position trying to make a positive change?
First off, I would love to give you a message that even if you're a junior PM in a multi-tiered organization, you can transform everyone or get everyone to change. Unfortunately, that's rarely the case. You can maybe make changes within your scope, and with permission from your manager, you can try out some of these techniques, and that might turn into a case study that maybe will be shared across the company. And you'll be surprised how much your leadership actually wants this. I mean, they're very frustrated with the organization, with the product organization, because they feel it's slow. They feel it's not delivering the things they need to succeed in the business. Almost universally, I hear the same complaint. They feel it's defocused. It's focused too much on engineering excellence and things like that. So they're really interested in ways to harness the product organization to serve the business better. And that should be actually the mission of the product organization as well as serving the customers, of course. The problem is that a lot of organizations believe that command and control, and exceedingly so, is the way to do this. And you actually need to teach them that it's the opposite. They need to let go. They need to control the wheel, showing you where you want it to go, but they need to allow you to explore multiple ideas. So how do you build the courage to do this? First off, until you ask, you'll never know. I mean, if
Right.
let's take a practical example. It's OKR season. Your manager comes to you with a bunch of things to build or an idea to build. Let's take just one. Said, here's a great idea. I want you guys to run with it. You could just take it and run with it, and then you inside you, you might suspect you're actually an expert in this area, that this is not the best idea. But you hold back, you don't speak because you want to be promoted or whatever it is. Stay within the culture. But you could start interviewing your manager very gently and ask, what will change if this idea is successful? What metrics? What behaviors of the customers or the business? And I'm sure they'll be able to explain. Then you can ask, do you mind if we add a note in the OKR that that's actually the target goal? We can leave your idea there. That's still the goal. Don't attack the idea just yet.
Yeah.
Go ahead, collect some data, and I offer a lot of ideas how to do that. Come back within a few days and say, you know what? The team and I found 4 other ideas that we think have even higher potential. Here's the analysis we've done, and your idea stacks 4th out of 5. These other ones seem to be of higher value. Or you might even run a secret experiment and come back with the data, the evidence that this idea is actually not in high demand at the moment, or a survey or something. And then you might run into one of 2 responses. The manager might get really angry with you for wasting time, quote unquote, and just tell you to get back to it. And then you're really faced either with a problematic person that is not being reasonable or really bad culture. Or they might be actually pleasantly surprised that you took the initiative. And they might say, yeah, I'm still very interested in this idea that I proposed to you, but let's continue also with these other few if you can. And it's really important to understand we don't have to commit at this point. We just need to take it to the next step. We just need to test it a little bit further. And it's a horse race. Which of these ideas will win? Maybe we need more than one idea because each one is contributing a little bit of impact. So that alone might change the relationship or the interaction between you and your manager. And then again, that might turn into a case study in the organization. Beyond that, I really suggest you find a champion at the C-level or a head of product or someone who really cares and is passionate about this and will speak to the leadership at that level. I think training helps a lot to introduce vocabulary and concept. I think books help a lot. Sorry, I'm not promoting just mine. There are many good ones. And I think, being honest and using evidence, not just opinions. Don't attack the senior people's opinions. Come with evidence and say, based on my research, this might be a better idea. Someone has to do it. It requires determined and innovative people to drive the change. The change will not come spontaneously from the top. You might be very frustrated if you wait for it. So you can make steps in that direction.
I think that's profound. I have one last question for you, and it's the crystal ball question. And the irony of asking the author of a book called Evidence Guided to look into the proverbial crystal ball is not lost on me. But I am curious to know, just because you're so steeped in this conversation of evidence guided and data driven decision making, as you're seeing organizations trend in one way or the other, are you optimistic, pessimistic? Are you looking at organizations getting more rigid or more open to these kind of conversations? The reason I'm asking is, up to the pandemic and even in the rebound post-pandemic, I feel like a lot of companies, even those that we work with, were looking to just add features on features and sort of throwing ideas into the backlog, whether it's through the hippo, the highest paid person in the room, or other influential plan and execute type models. It seems like from conversations that I've had recently, there is a shift towards a more evidence-guided approach. I don't know if that is just the kinds of conversations that I've been in, or if you're seeing a more widespread trend. So again, asking you to look into your crystal ball, but being evidence-guided as you do it, what are you looking at as a product community, a global product community going forward? Are we trending in a direction that resonates with your body of work, or do you think we still have a long way to go?
Yeah, well, the people I speak with, probably there is selection bias because they come to me usually after they read my articles or my book, or they hear one of my talks and they know what I'm about and they're interested in that. So I see tremendous interest. And one of the indicators is the massive community of coaches and trainers and advisors out there that teach exactly this product discovery. How do we do it? How do we become more evidence guided? And I'm just one out of many. So I think there's huge demand and huge thirst for it. Unfortunately, in the last 20 years, I saw a trend in the other direction, which was let's systemize more. Let's take Agile, which was this very ground roots movement, and turn it into this very convoluted, very structured, high intensity thing. And there's, the scalable Agile now and all these things. There's the specialization within companies where the sales team and the marketing team and everyone has to follow their own goals in different directions. And we kind of erected these walls between departments or between teams. So these things worry me. Again, on the positive side, what I see in the last 10, 15 years is that our access to data is much greater now with analytics tools, etc. And I think there's a very positive development now coming with generative machine learning, because now these systems will start collecting and processing the data for us. And the question, what evidence do we have and how strong is it, might be answered with a much lower cost. Today, there's a lot of friction in running the experiments, collecting the data. So I think these machine learning tools can help us reduce the cost and tell us when we come up with an idea, based on my data, here's the confidence level. Here's the impact that I can estimate. I would take huge caution in buying into this without human judgment. And that's also a theme in my book. Yeah, evidence, but keep human judgment. Keep the humans in the loop. It's just about informing our opinions with data. This mixture is the real potent magic dust. It's not about delegating the decisions to some spreadsheet or anything like that. So I think positive and negative. I see more traditionalism and more trying to go back to the old days. And on the other hand, a lot of more data and evidence available. So we might see a bipolar kind of market shift. I think natural selection will favor the companies that are more truly agile and truly are iterating towards creating higher value for their customers and for themselves much faster. So that's my prediction.
Yeah. Well, Itamar, I know it's a message that you've been trying to scream from the rooftops for a while, and I'm really grateful for the time to hear that and get it straight from you. I think your humility and the stories that you've shared, the products that you've been a part of, I think come through, and the real, I think, access to having that conversation, striking that balance between data driven and human judgment. I think that is a really optimistic tone and one I want to leave us with. But before we go, I just want to ask, where would be the place that you'd point people to find more about you, more about what you've been writing and been up to? I'd love to give the folks some more access to what you are working on these days and what's inspiring you.
Absolutely. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. So if you go to my website, itamargilad.com, you'll find a lot of these resources that we mentioned for free. There's ebooks, there are templates, and you can also find the book. It has its own website, evidenceguided.com, but you can also find it very prominently in my website. And I just encourage you to explore some of these things and reach back to me if you have questions or if you try them and you find that they work or don't work. I'm really into the evidence too from the field, what people actually find is working and not. So that will help me too if you do that. Yep, that's how you can find me.
Yeah, I love that you're dog fooding your own evidence-based process. Well, Itamar, it's been a treat for me to have this conversation with you. I'm sure this is going to be really educational for our audience listening. Thanks for taking the time. Cheers.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for today. In line with our goals of transparency and listening, we really want to hear from you. Sean and I are committed to reading every piece of feedback that we get, so please leave a comment or a rating wherever you're listening to this podcast. Not only does it help us continue to improve, but it also helps the show climb up the rankings so that we can help other listeners move, touch, and inspire the world just like you're doing. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next episode.